Today, we are deep diving into the 20-year history of Marvel Legends, from the ToyBiz days when we thought things could never get any better, all the way to where we are now with Hasbro. It's been a bumpy road at times, but we are truly in the golden age of action figures, and much of that is thanks to Marvel Legends. This is Fanatic Now. Welcome back, Fanatics, you marvelous legends, you. In 2001, after the genius idea by ToyBiz brand manager Jesse Falcon to create a highly articulated action figure with detailed sculpt work and tons of paint apps, Spider-Man Classics was born. It was an instant success, as it was targeting adult collectors unlike any line had ever done before. But ToyBiz couldn't settle there. They not only had a license for every Marvel character, they had essentially taken over the company after its Chapter 11 bankruptcy. So, in May of 2002, Marvel Legends Series 1 was released. Captain America, Hulk, Iron Man, and Toad. Let's take a looky-look, shall we? So, I prefer to open my figures for display, but I do keep certain ones in package for nostalgia reasons. ToyBiz Legends were known for their clamshell packaging. Here's the Series 1 title, and you can really tell that these were marketed towards adult collectors. Not only was this packaging more sophisticated than traditional toys of its time, but it was screaming collectible. You can see it was packed in with a reprint of Captain America 109, as well as this diorama stand. We have the destroyed building here with the American flag, just a solid introduction to the line. But ToyBiz came out swinging in other ways. Right from the beginning in Series 1, they included variants. The Hulk would have a version with a ripped white shirt, the Iron Man has the Model 3 armor, the golden Model 2 armor, and the stealth armor. This would continue in future lines as well. One of my favorites came in Series 2. Dr. Doom would have a removable mask where you could see his scarred face, but the variant was a Doombot. So cool. The concept really exploded in Series 3 with Marvel Legends' first Wolverine. Not only was he probably the hottest character of the time, but there was an unmasked variant. So many collectors needed both. At a time when eBay had become huge, Wolverine was selling for around $150. That was unheard of at the time. It was a current figure that you might could pick up at KB Toys for as low as $6.99. This would be known as a chase figure. For those that aren't aware of the term, a chase figure is literally a figure that collectors would chase after. They were produced and distributed in lower quantities, therefore harder to find and causing a craze. ToyBiz may not have invented this idea, but this is when chase figures became a huge deal. They didn't settle there. ToyBiz started packaging insane amounts of plastic into their clamshells. Goliath barely fit, but they still included Ant-Man and Wasp as pack-ins. Silver Surfer came with Howard the Duck, Deadpool with Dupe. Hell, Ghost Rider came with his motorcycle at regular price. They launched a whole ass Legendary Rider series where every character came with a vehicle of some sort. Plastic was cheap enough, so why not? They were rolling in money. The only problem they had at this point was that while people were going crazy for some of them, others became peg warmers.
This just in, companies prefer when you buy every goddamn thing they produce. Back to you.
ToyBiz would attack this conundrum in February of 2005 with the introduction of the Build-A-Figure. That's right, if you don't skip out on any of the characters, you're rewarded with a huge action figure for free. This goes right to the heart of what it is to be a collector. Gotta collect them all. Sales exploded. Series 9 would be labeled as the Galactus series, followed up by the Sentinel series, then Apocalypse, Onslaught, Mojo, Giant Man, and MODOK. Now, I won't go too deep into this, but an interesting argument could be made over who invented the Build-A-Figure. We had seen combiner lines dating all the way back to the 70s, and they were hugely popular in the 80s with Voltron and Transformers.
Where the valiant Voltron force merges together in their robotic lions to challenge.
But that was something different. In 1994, Bandai released a line of Mighty Morphin Power Rangers that each came with individual weapons, but you could combine all 5 of those together to create one larger weapon, a Power Blaster. McDonald's even got in on the idea, collecting a bunch of stuff in order to create something bigger and better when they promoted an Inspector Gadget line in the late 90s. And here's where I really think it gets juicy. Moby Dick Toys released a line for Resident Evil 3 in 2001, where each of the 17 figures came with parts to build a Nemesis, over 20 inches long. But regardless of whose idea it was, nobody ever embraced the idea like ToyBiz did when they launched Build-A-Figures. They could have sold these larger figures individually at a premium price point, but decided it made more economic sense to include them for free by convincing us to purchase the entire wave. This was a collector's wet dream, an action figure company giving us everything we wanted, and the ability to build huge figures we never dreamed imaginable, at cheap prices. ToyBiz was king.
Heavy lies the crown.
With over 100 unique figures, nothing could stop them, right? Right?
Because of the dollar's decline, oil prices are moving up.
Hello, darkness, my old friend.
In 2006, with oil prices nearly tripling since the line was born, sales didn't necessarily equate to profits. Now, to be fair, oil prices were only a part of the problem. ToyBiz was so dedicated to giving us the vast variety of characters we wanted that almost all of the parts were unique, and that meant unique tooling. In case you didn't know, every single plastic part requires a unique tool made that can mass produce it. These aren't cheap. I've heard that minifigures can cost upwards of $100,000 in tooling. That doesn't count paying for plastic or paint or employees, just the tool. So if you aren't reusing these tools for many different characters, that shit gets expensive. I'm not gonna name names.
I'm not the fucking rat.
But industry insiders have hinted off the record that ToyBiz owed the manufacturing companies building these tools millions of dollars. I don't have evidence for that, but the story would line up. Their profits couldn't cover the cost, and
The bill comes due.
in the States, ToyBiz would become Marvel Toys, and then pass the Marvel Legends undertaking to industry giant Hasbro. The new packaging was smaller, no room for a comic book or large diorama piece. They would continue the Build-A-Figure pieces with Annihilus, Blob, Brood, Nemesis, Red Hulk, and Ares. These were large figures, but definitely not massive. The exception was Fin Fang Foom, but that was also a special pre-sale rollout that they did at San Diego Comic-Con and would be a retailer exclusive after that. They continued to reduce sculpt, articulation, and paint detail. They began reusing many more parts across multiple characters, all while increasing the price. And we weren't having it. Sales tanked. This wasn't Hasbro's first rodeo, so to help sales, they tried to convince everyone to start buying characters all over again in the 3.75-inch figure labeled Marvel Universe. That line would start out fairly successful, but I won't get onto a tangent about that because A, they weren't Marvel Legends, and B, they were later discontinued. What is important to note, however, is that when the Universe action figures hit stores in 2009, the Legends line had all but come to a screeching halt. There would only be a few waves dropped in the next few years, and by 2011, only a single figure was released, and it was at San Diego Comic-Con. It was like Marvel Legends told us they were going to the store to pick up some smokes and never came back. That Thor was pretty cool though. I know it could be made better by today's standards, but I love the sculpt and comic accuracy, and many of us thought that this could possibly be the last Marvel Legends ever made. But even though sales had slowed, collectors were screaming for the 6-inch return, and since the MCU had really picked up steam, Hasbro announced that they would be bringing back the line in 2012. This was the Return of Marvel Legends phase, where we'd get the Arnim Zola and Ironmonger waves. But they were still struggling to keep the sales point low based on petroleum prices versus sales volume. Their attempt at savings would first be to move towards tiny baths, like Rocket Raccoon and Puck. We weren't thrilled about that at all. Hasbro regrouped and announced that they were rebranding the line to be called Marvel Legends Infinite Series. This is where they turned things around for many collectors. While the build quality would see slow improvement, their real genius in making the line survive was behind the scenes. They changed the SKUs. I won't go too in depth because it's probably boring to most people, but instead of just selling boxes of Marvel Legends solo to the stores, they linked the releases to retailer shelf space and other Hasbro toys, and synced it with movie promotions. We'd get a Captain America line ahead of Winter Soldier hitting theaters, and an Amazing Spider-Man line for the second Andrew Garfield movie. This meant that they were in the face of kids and adults right there on the shelf in the most prominent spots. Things were moving in the right direction now as far as healthier sales, but they still needed more interest. To keep prices low, they needed to be making higher quantities, which meant they needed more collectors. Over 2014 and 15, you would see more MCU figures included in the lines. Now, this was very controversial because many collectors only wanted comic accurate characters, but it worked. More people jumped into collecting them, and the line began to prosper. As they started to get the numbers they needed, they started listening to the fans. Dropping the Infinite name and moving forward as the Legend series, Hasbro has improved their sculpts and paint apps every year. They started including multiple hands and heads for more figures that needed it. They started remaking some of the ToyBiz classics that were very popular, but proving just how far the line had progressed by outdoing them. Using social media, they've connected with fans, keeping us informed and taking suggestions. Told you I'd get to my boys. One recent suggestion that they listened to was about making a female body mold, get an upgrade there, giving us double jointed elbows. Now, while many collectors such as myself wish we were still getting large Build-A-Figures, they have rolled out their deluxe line, which has seen quite an increase in size, scale and all that, albeit we do have to purchase these separately. The biggest splash has come in the way of HasLab projects. In 2001, we received the largest Marvel Legends of all time, the Sentinel. This giant mutant hunter is comprised of 260 pieces, stands over 26 inches tall, and has 72 points of articulation. In 2022, we will be receiving Galactus, an even larger Marvel Legends figure. As someone who has collected these bastards for nearly 18 years, I know we like to complain, and many times rightfully. It's basically in the DNA of every collector. But I hope this history does explain some of the reasons this amazing line has evolved so much. And by all means, do not stop complaining, because that's the main reason that this amazing line has evolved so much. In the end, however, we should bask in the sun that is Marvel Legends, because we are truly living in the golden age of action figures. And it's thanks to you, the collector. Thank you for joining me. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so that we can continue bringing you new content. I'll link part 1 right here, so check that out if you haven't seen it. Comment below what your first Marvel Legends was, and whether you preferred ToyBiz, or what you want me to talk about next. Until then, later fanatics.